morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be joined in this very beautiful setting by Nicky Sasman, our guest for today's RUC People. We're sitting in her garden, and it's a beautiful sunny day in Cape Town, and so it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you, Nicky. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Nicky, many at RUC would be familiar with you because of your role in leading, I think, the Creation Care Group, and you know. This kind of a scene brings that easily to mind. Tell us a little bit about that group and how it started and what you're trying to achieve with it.
Well, it started many years ago, and it was actually through the youth of the church. We were really asking the church to be more relevant, and part of that relevance was about the environmental issues which were really coming to the fore. And so I heard that, and I felt that really resonated with me, and that I needed to, I could maybe play some sort of role. And so together with Mimi, Simon, who I had known through church and before that, we looked at what we could really be doing. So we started with an audit of the church, an environmental audit. And from that, possible actions came out, and we realized that then we needed to form some sort of group. This was at a time when the church was becoming active in environmental issues, and through SACSI and environmental audits were being encouraged. So that's where it all started. And then it's just developed from there, and we're so grateful that Robert has really run with that theme so beautifully in the services and in what the church is doing.
And has environmental and green issues always been something close to your heart?
Well, not directly. My mom had got the science of recycling down to a fine art. And so we grew up with that. In fact, we were known as the family with the small rubbish bags.
Okay.
And so it was always ingrained in me. And I've always loved the outdoors and hiking. So I've always loved nature. And this is where I feel closest to God, is when I'm in nature. So it was as I had been through the political struggle and being socially active, there came a time when we realized that the new site of struggle was actually around the environment and our children's future. So that's and also through the influence of friends, it actually influenced my career as well, and I spent 2 years in climate change adaptation.
Okay. Well, we'll dig a little bit deeper in terms of the career and your family background. So maybe take us back, to the start. Where's home for you? Where were you born? Where did you grow up? And tell us a bit about your family.
Okay. Home is very close. I was brought up in Newlands, just up the hill there, and my mom and dad met on a boat coming out from Southampton to Cape Town. My mom had done a few months of hitchhiking around Europe. That was the 1950s. And my dad was from England, and he had trained as a geologist, and he was sent in the services of Her Majesty the Queen to come and map the geology of Zambia.
Wow. And
they met on that trip and married a year later, and then he got a post at the university after a year when they got married, and that was his life until his retirement.
Okay. And so you part of a big family, siblings. Where did you go to school?
I've got an older sister, Robin. She's 2.5 years older than me, and we both went to Rustenburg Junior School.
Okay, of course.
And then she chose to go to Westerford High, and so I followed her there.
Okay. And school years, were they happy for you?
Rustenburg was difficult. It was a very formal school at that time, but I made good friends, and I enjoyed that. But I loved Westerford. It was a wonderful time. I had a great group of friends, and through my sister's influence again, and having the right friends, we got involved in the Christian Union there, and that was really influential in my life.
And were your parents part of the church? Were you brought up as a church young person?
My dad was an atheist.
Oh, okay.
And my mom was a Methodist, and so she took us to the Rosebank Methodist Church
Okay.
as we were growing up. So I spent my Sunday school years there, and also youth group. That's where. So I actually grew up in a church with James Erland, who you would remember through the Sustainable Suppers, and
Yes.
he's
been coming to RUC just the last few weeks, actually.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And so, through school, did you get a sense of where you wanted to go with your life, future directions, university? How did that play out for you?
Well, I think the most influential part of school was actually the Christian Union, which was very active and exposed me to, helped me in that stage of life in developing my understanding of the world and my worldview, and so it didn't directly influence my career choice, but but really where my value system. And I'll never forget John Broster, who was the teacher leader at the time, went to the SACFA conference, South African Christian Leadership Assembly, in the late 70s. And, as Christians in South Africa, we'd always been warned of the swart gevaar and the rooi gevaar.
Okay.
And he came back absolutely amazed. He said to us, he's met Black Christians, and so for me, as Christians, we were all one family, and so we couldn't. There was no place for racial prejudice. But these Christians were saying that, in their experience as Black South Africans, they think communism could be a better option, and so clearly that the threat of communism was minimal. We were praying for Christians behind the Iron Curtain. But here were Christians in South Africa saying we're suffering even more. So it was a real awakening for me as to what was happening in this country and that something was wrong. And as Christians, we couldn't stand back because, these are our brothers and sisters. So it was the beginning of my conscientization, I think.
Okay. And so you went from school to university. What did you study and where?
My favorite subject was geography and maths, and so I studied a BSc in geography. And I had been interested, in fact, through my geography teacher. He took us up to Rhodes Memorial and said, look out here. This was the late 1970s. The whole of the Cape Flats will be full of urbanization by the time you're an adult. And that fascinated me, to think that there was going to be all this development and maybe I could be part of influencing it. And so I ended up choosing to do town planning.
Okay, and where did you study?
Like at GCT.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did that resonate with you? We can choose things as a learner at school and then get to university and think, it wasn't quite what I thought, or, I'm not really sure if this is where I'm wanting to go. Did it, sort of center for you?
Yeah, no, I loved it. I loved it. It was very, very hard work. It's a master's course. I still loved it. But again, university was the academic side, but very much around my development as a person. I think in your young adulthood, that really shapes who you are. So I joined the Student Christian Association, which was really strong as an evangelically based, but multi-denominational, non-denominational organization. So I learned a lot about what it means to be a Christian, not just in South Africa, but in the world. So we were reading books like The Mustard Seed Conspiracy and The Upside Down Kingdom and Christians in an Age of Hunger. So it was a really exciting time to be learning as a Christian what it meant for your faith and for your life. That the two were inseparable.
So then how did that play out for you? You're motivated, inspired. Did you find a way to put it into action in your life, in your career?
Yeah. Well, let me go back. So the other thing was that many of my friends were leaving their country because they didn't see a future or they were facing the army and didn't want to sign up. So it was really a time of making choices, and one had to choose to stay or to go. And I was clearly rooted here, and it meant if you chose to stay, you had to say, well, what does it mean to stay? What does it mean to be an African? And I didn't know what that meant for me. I didn't feel I was ready to join the armed struggle. I was involved in the Christian struggle. but I did feel that something was missing in me. I had grown up not really knowing my African brothers and sisters. So I had the opportunity in my first job to move to Mthatha, which was then the Transkei, which was then had some freedoms which we didn't have in South Africa. In fact, Bantu Olomisa was our military general.
Okay, wow.
And so I stayed there for 3.5 years in my first job.
So what was your first job?
I was an apprentice town and regional planner in a private company called VARA, Vanderpura at the Robinson and Associates.
And how was that whole experience being in the Transkei? Do you have any memories of that sort of really stand out?
It was fantastic. It was a unique opportunity, and I'm so grateful for it. From a career point of view, I got amazing experience. And then from a faith point of view, I found a spiritual home in a women's theology group. And that was an amazing group of foreign and local people, and learned a lot through that. But my greatest experience was learning my Africanness and what that meant. So I had already started to learn Xhosa at GCT through Cameron Dugmore. He was offering voluntary classes.
Okay.
And then when I was in Mthatha, I specifically used a language learning program which missionaries use. And it's just about being with people, living your life, and not coming as somebody who comes as somebody who's offering something as as the giver, but rather just meeting on an equal level. So through the church, through a nun, I managed to link up with a family in a village outside Mthatha. And so every weekend I would go and stay there, and just to be and to learn the language. And so I would work with the older children in the home to develop a little text, which I would practice and learn, and then we would go to the villages and we would chat.
And has that language stayed with you?
Dear Zama. However I can, I still try to use my Xhosa.
Okay, wonderful. And so, at the same time, the things happening in the personal life, when did Ivan come into the picture?
Oh, much later.
Oh, I see. Okay, well, we'll get there. So, 3.5 years in the Eastern Cape, and then did you come back to Cape Town? And what? Yeah.
I came back to vote for the first time. That was 1994. And then I needed a gap year. I hadn't taken one before that. And so I traveled with a friend overseas in Eastern Europe, Turkey, and worked in London for a while. And then came back and again picked up my career from there.
Okay. Yeah. How was the gap year?
Great. Yeah. And it was just fun.
Wonderful. So came back, and what happened then?
So then I managed to get a contract job with the City of Cape Town. They had opened a community liaison unit. So this was post-94, and they really didn't know how to establish a relationship between civil society and the municipality. And so it was a time of the Reconstruction and Development Program where those social compacts, which Ramaphosa still talks about, were meant to galvanize us all towards developing a new South Africa. And so that was very exciting, being part of building that up and strengthening those bonds between the municipality and civil society. And then, that's then morphed into social development, which really wasn't my forte. But what that did, it prepared me for my next job, again within the municipality, of working in land restitution.
Which has been a hot topic in this country for a very long time. And so, what did that look like for you? What was your role, and did you feel like you were able to make some steps forward for the country there?
Yeah, again, it was such a privilege to work with claimants. So our job as the municipality was to prepare land which we had for restitution up until the point where it could be handed over to claimants. And really to support the Land Claims Commission. So that was a really difficult job because the Land Claims Commission itself was struggling. And claimants themselves were having a really bad experience of working with government all over again. they were suffered already, and now they were suffering again. So I found myself in a place where I could show sympathy and listen to their stories and really try to give them an experience of government which was healing, it was redemptive, almost, that they could see a face of government who really cared and was working at making a difference.
Were you in a position where you could not only listen and care and empathise, but actually make things happen?
Yeah, no, we did. So we managed to get a few claims settled. The ones that I was involved in, one was Richmond Park, and I took a church group out there to actually see the development happening on the ground, which was so exciting. Protea Village has been another of my projects, and we saw that one to the point of being successfully completed. But my wish, my desire was always that people can return. It's not just about a title deed or something on paper. It has to be real to people. And I'm glad to see that the Protea Village claim is moving in that direction.
And maybe we'll just stay with your career for now and come back to family and other things. But how did the career continue to develop, and right up to the present day? What are you doing now?
So then claims were sort of being settled quite well, and things were going smoothly. But the leadership in the city, or my management, were wanting me to move on to other things, and I was not interested. So I thought, let me jump ship before that happens. And my colleague, who was also part of my contextual theology group, Pam Solakile, she had moved into the environmental sector, NGO sector. And it made me think that actually this is the next site of struggle. It really is our next challenge. And restitution was going to taper out. So I thought, well, from the career point of view, I also need to be thinking ahead. So I had an opportunity to go and work in a private organization, One World Sustainable Investments, in climate change adaptation in Southern Africa. And that just broadened my perspective completely around environmental issues. And I learned a whole lot more about what was happening to every COP that was happening every year. So yes, got some great experience there. Yeah.
Okay, and right now, what's...
So then I was retrenched. So I scuttled back to the municipality.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And they took me on as a project manager and working in Nyanga on an urban node upgrade. And there I worked with VPU and again, the connections with RUC. And then that contract finished, and I got a position in transport planning within the municipality, and felt like a bit of a fraud not having any transport training. So I enrolled at UCT for an MPhil in transport studies, and I'm just finishing that off now.
Okay.
And I've had about 6 good years there. I've made a little bit of progress, and really happy in that field. So that's probably where I'll stay till my retirement.
Okay, wonderful. And so, when did you meet Ivan, and how did that marriage, family come to be?
Yeah, so when I came back and settled in Cape Town, I bought a flat and had a flatmate, and she said one evening, a friend of hers, they're going to dance, would I like to come? And I thought, I've got nothing better to do. And so through her friend, Ivan was part of that group at the dance. It was actually at his alma mater, South Peninsula High School.
Okay.
And he was there obviously because of the school connection, and I was there because of my friend connection.
Okay. One thing led to another?
Yeah, we were a nice group, and we had some socials after that. But clearly there was something there, and it was very exciting. He's much older than I am, and I was old by that time. I think I was 32 or something. So when we met and we could see something there, we knew this was it. There was no fooling around or anything. We just knew. So He proposed a couple of months later, and we got married a year after that.
Okay. And you have a child.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
So we, Jordan was our firstborn in 2002, and then Tim came along in 2005. I must just say, we went back to my family in outside Umtata in the village, Kwanonkobe. And that was such a privilege. Tata then gave Ivan a Xhosa name. Mine is Mondjatjambo.
Okay.
And Ivan's Xhosa name is Mvule Hlobo, summer rain. Mine means flower. And then they gave Jordan, our oldest son, the name of Temba, because that's a family name. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. And how was that for you, juggling career and motherhood? Was it challenging? And what kind of work does Ivan do?
Ivan's an architect, so he was running his own practice and very, very busy. So I think what suffered during that time was any sense of the world beyond these four walls. I had to just focus in. Life was so busy with work and family, little kids, very busy. Loved having kids. I've just loved being a mother. I've never been broody in any way, but it's been such fun. But yes, I do. In that time, I couldn't think beyond that, so I wasn't very active in church or anything in that time.
So back to the church thing. I mean, how did you said your father was an atheist, your mother was a Methodist, you went to Rosebank Methodist. Did you stay with them? How did you make your way to RUC?
So when I came back after my time overseas and came to settle in Cape Town, I was looking for a church. I had been at Christchurch for a while, which was good for that time, but I didn't feel ready to go back. And again, I actually tried some churches in township where I felt, this is my Africanness. I want that to be in my church as well. And one of the churches I tried was Rondebosch United, Hong Kong at the time, And the week after I went there, Douglas back cycled round to my house, and I was staying with my parents, and sat me down and sort of said, well, you're going to, I want you to join my church.
Okay.
So then by then I did digs with Dave Harrison when I was a student.
Wow, okay.
And so that's where I met the Shays. They had just arrived in South Africa. So I knew about RUC, and I'd been a couple of times, but it had never been my church. But I had enough connection with it to say that this could be my church. So yes, I was one of the younger members when I arrived there, and I was in my late 20s.
Okay. Say something about the rest. Yeah.
But clearly, I mean, Douglas, amazing sermons and a lovely, caring, accepting congregation, and it's remained that way.
Yeah. And you've managed to get involved with different things at RUC over the years, and obviously there's something about the community that makes you want to stay.
When I've gone through tough times in my life, it's a church that's always been there. So I think that's it for me. It's almost like a lifeline for the bad times, and in the good times, it's I just feel so accepted. So a sense of belonging.
Can I just touch briefly on the bad times? What have been some of the most difficult things you've had to, deal with in your life, and how have you managed?
So Ivan, through his business, was involved in building the forensic lab up in Plattekloof for the Department of Public Works. And there was some part of his professional team who defrauded the department out of wanting to being greedy. And Ivan tried to deal with it at the time, and it wasn't well dealt with. And so once the project finished, the department took this company to court. And when they weren't making much progress, they decided to pull Ivan in, who was the lead architect. So we were being sued for 23 million rand.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah. It was, and it hung over our head for a good couple of years. Just felt this sort of Damocles, it could fall any time. We didn't have any resources for legal fees. Ivan had to use some of his pension. But Ivan will say it's the best time of his life. He said he goes very deep spiritually and he learned so much and he was able to deal with it. He's got an incredible inner strength, which I can just marvel at. And he worked diligently at it, and we prayed. And the church prayed, and I remember going to Caroline Butler at that time. She was amazing and just helping me realize that out of every valley you come out to the hill on the other side. And we did. The case was dropped against us and settled with this other company, and we were free.
Huge relief.
Yeah.
Martin Wells from our church has
Yes.
also had a similar experience recently with Noseweek in a big legal firm, so huge stress, I'm sure. And so you've talked about your faith a few times, and the very early years that with Christian Union and Varsity, that it was sort of challenging you very much about the role you have to play in South Africa, your Africanness, the desire to be part of change. It sounds like that's been a theme right through your life, that's integrally linked with your faith. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So when I went back to Varsity to do my postgraduate course, I moved from the Student Christian Association to SUCA, the Student Union for Christian Action. And that was far strongly student-led and more African-led. So that was amazing. And that's where I met Mimi and Steve. They were also part of that. And we were just a small group at UCT, but we also got involved in action. So we got involved with Cowley House, which was the group that, the organization that supported the families of political prisoners on Robben Island. And through that, I had the privilege of actually, through one of my friends at Suka, starting to write to a prisoner, Frans Maserumule, and I was able to visit him once on the island before he was released. So, that's, again, such a privilege.
And Nicky, what does fun look like for you outside of work and family and responsibility? What is it that makes you smile, makes you relax, makes you excited?
There hasn't been much of that, and I think there needs to be more in the future. Especially with the young family, and then with my studies more recently. Not much free time, and I must say during lockdown I became a bit of a Netflix junkie. But my first and foremost is to be out walking or hiking. That's always been my best. And then every year we go camping for a couple of weeks down in the Garden Route, and that really just recharges my batteries.
Well, you live in a beautiful part of the world to be able to indulge that hobby and that passion.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of what's next for you? From where you sit now, are there things on the horizon that are occupying you, exciting you?
So, career-wise, there seems to be just a straight direction of I've just arrived into it, really. So that can see me through to retirement. I don't know after retirement what's the possibilities. It's so exciting to see that a whole new purpose can come out of that. Then I just think it's going to be really exciting to see what happens in the world in terms of what is the next site of struggle. And I know that the environmental one will continue, but there are also some exciting things around renewable energies, especially in transport, and the way that we've been so adaptive. And if we see how technology has changed our lifestyle, my lifestyle certainly over the years, and so what the future holds for that, I want to be part of that. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like, through all of your career and your other interests, you've been part of some of the really cutting-edge issues for the world, with land restitution, with climate, and involved in race, I guess, and the way that intersects with those kind of issues. So have to write a book one day, put it all together, reflecting on your very rich experiences. So.
Yeah, the other thing that's important in my life at the moment is I mentioned we're part of a contextual theology group here in Cape Town, and that has now morphed into the Hambeko Kanyeni Contextual Theology Collective. We used to meet in Langa, now we meet online, but it's a collection of people from that sort of focused on Langa. And what does it mean? What is the context of Langa? How does that influence our theology and our praxis, the way that we live our lives? So yes, I see that's another exciting part of my future.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time and sharing so openly about your life, and also on behalf of everyone at RUC for the role you've played there with Creation Care Group. I think you've got an activity on tomorrow as well, so thank you again, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.